Okay, people, back again. This time I have, what is this? The Gates of Thorbardin. Oh, look at that. Look at that cover. Ooh. Got a dwarf. We got some kind of helmet. Mm. Okay. Obviously, spoiler alert if you're a big Gates of Thorbardin fan and you hadn't finished it yet. I'm about to spoil it, so back on out. I'm gonna be honest. I grabbed this because you see how it's an old book, so it's all worn out here. I don't know if you can see. Maybe you can see. Actually, it looks clearer on camera in a quick glance. In any case, I thought Dragonlance said Dungeons and Dragons, and then I saw the picture, which was really what was distracting me. Hold on. Hold on, Mike. Hope y'all heard the rest of that before I move the mic. I'm not going back. I got distracted by the picture. Let's be honest. Okay? And so I'm like, picture, and Dungeons and Dragons, let's go. But it actually says Dragon Lance. I don't know what that is. I've never heard of that. Okay? But when you walk into a secondhand store and they have a wall full of books that are 50 cents, and then they say we're having a half off sale, you don't pay too much attention, right? 25 cents, YOLO. In any case, I also got it, another reason. It says volume 2, right? You can see that? I'm going to show y'all this book a lot. I have a conniption about starting at the very beginning of stories, right? Now, some people, this is not a problem. They can grab like book 3 in the series and just go with it. I can't do that as well. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try it on this book, try and break that habit, get through more books because I don't need I don't need like a whole series of a crappy book when I could have found out it was crappy randomly, right? So that's why another reason I got it. But it was mainly that the bad boy cost 25 cents. Okay, so about this particular book. Um, one fun thing, one fun thing you notice, every chapter will have this nice little picture. Every chapter is going to be different. Hold on. That's a dead bird. I don't want to show you that. Where are them fighting dwarves? Bugger. Just found the same picture again. He's ugly. Every chapter will kind of have a different picture that's relatable to, obviously, what they're talking about. I thought it was a nice little, I'm like, hey, this is pretty nice. You don't get that a lot, little pictures in little books. And some of them would repeat, right? Like the lady I showed. They'll show her again when it's sort of a chapter about her. I thought that was really nice. I think more books should do that. I don't think we should be afraid of some artwork, right? So that was a pleasant surprise. So it started off on a good note. I mean, like, what is this? Page 1 is starting like that. Page 1, right? I'm like, ooh, are we getting down now, people? It starts off with this is a pure fantasy book, 100%. We got dwarves, we got elves. They call them kinder, but I'm assuming that's like a hobbit thing or something. They have gnomes, goblins, ogres, wizards. Everything you want on the fantasy buffet. It's here. It's not trying, it's not trying to be something else. What is it? It's like a Big Mac. You know what you're getting, and it tastes exactly like you want it to taste when you want it to taste that way. No pretense here. Our viewpoints, the dwarves. Well, one dwarf. His name's, I call him Chane Feldstone. His name's Chane. So I made it sound that way so I didn't say Cheney, and think of Cheney the whole time. Could have ruined it for me. Bad name will ruin a book. He's being chased by a big old cat, like a saber tooth something, and he kills one. I mean, action already. Then we meet Chestel Thicket Sway. It's a weird name. They just call him Chest the whole time. He's a kinder, and then the moment he's there, because before, when it's just the dwarf, we have like a serious feeling book. So I'm like, oh, is that how this one's gonna go? But once the dwarf shows up, I mean the kinder, I just thought Hobbit, little guy. Once the kinder shows up, then you're like, oh, I kind of figured out what this book was. This book is an 80s movie, right? What does that mean? In the 80s, they seemed to they would think of a good serious topic, right? But then couldn't help but put in like goofy stuff. But then they'd keep one railroad track serious and one goofy. Versus now we'll make it a full comedy or commit to the serious. They didn't do that in the 80s. They just let one roll next to the other. So in the one instance you're having this deep conversation about this prophecy. And then the other instance, this gnome's farting or some mess like this. It's this weird mushing together, right? Now, personally, I don't like movies from the 80s. I don't like the 80s in general. And for that sentiment, right, that flavoring, I didn't like this book if it were me. But I read it and I can judge it without that prejudice, let's say. Because this is a good book. This is a shockingly good book. This book, I'll say, if you want fantasy, right, this book is better than this one, right? This one's better than this one. That should be the cover. I should do some clickbaity, you know, Thorbardin better than Game of Thrones. I should do some clickbaitiness. I'm not. I'm too lazy. But it holds to its characters, its story, and its what do I want to say? Like the director's consistent, let's say, if it were a film. Its internal structure doesn't vary, even with the goofy kinders when gnomes show up and they're silly as all get out. It holds up internally, in lore. It holds up. The story's not half bad either. It holds up. If you want fantasy, this will be a better choice. A better time. Your time will be better spent with this than a Game of Thrones. I guarantee you. Yeah, I was shocked too. Some of the lore. He We have hill dwarves, mountain dwarves. Sometimes they don't get along, and that's what this book does. It will grab some of the tropes we're used to, change them up a little bit, but not so much that we can't spot them. Then sort of move on. Dwarves fighting dwarves. That's something you don't typically get. We get these goofy joke elements from the gnomes and the kinders. We have a wizard who isn't. You clearly think Gandalf when he's talked about or described. The characters want him around because he's a wizard and he knows stuff. But he doesn't know everything, right? He's not the source of all your answers, which normally in these stories the wizards are. Again, a little bit of a change. It keeps things way more interesting than this book deserves to have, right? So, testament to Dan Parkinson. Mad respect to you. Oh, that's another thing. At some point, they mentioned the veil of respite. And then it got me thinking how sci fi and fantasy seem to do this, where they give you like 50,000 names of places that don't mean anything to you. And it's like we're going to have like a chapter at least of this where it's just like go down to the Hall of Seeing and up to the Rock of Mighty Mound, right? And strike it down with the hammer of Uganzel and all this mess. And you're like, what is he talking about? He doesn't do this in this book. We describe hills. There's a mountain over there. And it fits because our guys in lore don't know the names of all the mountains. They don't know all the places. To our dwarf, a valley is just a valley. He doesn't know the name of it. He's never been outside the dwarf kingdom. So it holds and it doesn't overwhelm the reader. And you're able to just chomp away like a big bag of chips. Real tasty. At some point, and I think this is just fun, our dwarf, they find, I don't know, some kind of gnomish contraption. He starts picking metal off of it, and he somehow, I don't know, because he's a dwarf, I guess. We don't go into too much detail. He makes like a makeshift forge, hot enough that he can melt metal, and he makes a hammer, I guess out of like a sand mold in the ground or something. Anyways, he makes a hammer to make another hammer because you need a better hammer to anvil out better weapons or whatever. I guess his plan was to sit there in the middle of nowhere until he could make a sword or something. I'm kind of dwarf-like, very dwarf-like. Then we sort of get a name, Jillian Firestoke, and this is sort of where we get more of the story, what's happening. That's his lady friend, his dwarf lady friend, very pretty. Her dad hates our boy Chane. Sometimes there's nothing you can do. He had dreams, some kind of dreams of his destiny, where he has to go out and find some helmet, literally a battle helmet, to save the kingdom of Thorbardin. Right? That there's some sneaky way in no one knows. The helmet will tell him, and then he'll save everybody. And we go into some long-winded thing about why these other people want to attack or something. That part's never really made too clear, but no one in story really cares, so I don't care either. Right? There's some evil one somewhere. I'm like, there's always an evil one. I can go with that. You don't need to further explain it. He's like, good, because I'm not going to. That's all you're going to get. I'm like, works for me. That element, too, where the father doesn't want the daughter marrying the guy. Again, it's one of those examples of a serious element handled very lightly because she's just like, well, whatever, my dad's an idiot. I'm going to go anyway. This kind of thing, right? One of these sassy neck situations. And he just shoves it in there. He's like, well, this is what we're going to do. And I'm like, okay, we're not thinking about this. He doesn't overthink it. Our wizard is Galin Shadow the Wanderer. I'm going to be honest, this wizard hardly does anything but be serious on the side, right? He does that. They end up finding some kind of stone called Spellbinder. It means magic doesn't work around it. So the wizard can't really do anything. When he tries like to make them invisible, he makes them all glow for some random reason. Because this thing messes with his magic. So he can't do anything around the group. And so half of he's like, why is he there? And when they ask, why are you here? He's just real serious and mutters, kind of. He won't give clear answers. I'm like, no, he won't. He's a wizard. They never give a clear answer. But he'll run off occasionally and have some kind of vision or something, right? I don't have a problem with it. We meet Irda. They keep calling her the Irda, but it's not capitalized. So I think it's one of these, like, I don't want to say male or female situations. But not like woke, not like it's shoving it down your throat. He's just leaving it to linger. She's a shapeshifter. She shapeshifts into like a tall black lady, which reminded me of the what is it, that Star Trek movie? I'll find a picture. I'll put it up. It worked. She didn't do much in the story. She was in control of the cast that were trying to kill our boy at the beginning, and then very conveniently she just clears them out of the zone so we don't have to deal with them anymore. A lot of conveniences in this book. But again, I don't mind it. As you're eating, right, like a bag of chips, they just taste good. And you're like, well, this isn't a problem. And it's later when you feel bad, when you got a little tummy ache, you're like, I shouldn't have eaten that whole bag of chips. That's sort of this book without the tummy ache, right? It's a book. You don't get a tummy ache. You're just like, that was junk food, fantasy junk food. And I liked it. I didn't mind it at all. I will say, I bet I'll remember these characters and the things that happen in this book longer than sort of your Game of Thrones, right? So a book where it seems like it's not trying as hard stuck better than a book that's trying way harder. And I can tell this old Game of Thrones here, he trying real hard. It's just trash. Uh, bu- 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 Obviously, it's our boy Chane's destiny to take this spellbinder, hold it. It shows him the way to the helmet for some reason, like a GPS, actually on the ground, this green line. I mean, that's convenient. It's a magical stone. It can do it. Why not? We meet a man called Wingover. He's just like this explorer type with a shield. They always make sure to mention his shield. And he meets up with another wanderer, elf, called Garon Windestalis. Yeah, it's the most complicated name in the book. I didn't. It was like it tripped you as you're reading along. You're like, la la, trip, Windestalis. I'm like, dang it, bro, warn me. Hold on. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. So our boy Wingover ends up. I think he owed a debt. He owed a debt to another dwarf, right? A favor. So back in the day, you're like, I owe you a favor. It's not just here's $10,000 or whatever. I'm like, nah, bro. I saved you from a burning like, fire pit. I'm gonna just need a favor. So I'm gonna just sit on this favor. It's one of these situations. So he ends up calling in the chip, and he needs to bring our girl Jillian out into the wilderness to find her man. Right? She's gonna go find her man. She ain't playing. And he like flips out, and I swear it plays like I don't know what channel y'all have that shows retro TV. Where I'm at, it's called Me TV. It's the channel. I don't know why it's called that. Where they show shows from like the 70s or the 70s and the 80s. Emergency, your Dragnet, Perry Mason, these kind of things. And the way he flips out is like a sexist 80s sitcom. I swear. He's like, women can't be out there and blah, 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 and this and that. So if like you get triggered, just warning going in that's going to act that way. Also, don't watch those TV shows. You're going to flip out. And if you've seen them, you know what I mean. They're moments in those shows that you could not air on TV today. They only get away with it because no one's watching. No one but people who's already seen them and aren't disturbed by it. It's very hilarious. Very funny. And it's clearly supposed to be a joke. Again, I don't like 80s movies, so I wasn't like falling out of my chair laughing at it, but I get what he was going for, and I think he nailed it. Again, if you like 80s movies, if you just want a bag of junk food fantasy, this will work for you. Now, our boy Garon Wendesthalis, the elf, goes badly for him. And that's another of these what I mean by 80s. He gets jacked up. Like, he gets captured. He runs off like, I'm going to go kill more orcs or goblins or whatever they're called. And he gets captured by our evil lady, which we'll get to, and just jacked up. Like, I think they cut off his ear. It says they, like, cut the tendons in his legs. I'm like, Jesus! Right? Because the rest of the story is floating so softly. Yes, they're in danger, but the sense isn't anything serious is going to happen. You know, it's a very soft, and then out of the blue, we're cutting tendons, and I'm like, Jesus. And he doesn't blink an eye. I mean, that's just the story element he throws in. He just trudges right along through. Our boy, our author, just trudges right on through this mess. And so you don't get to linger on it too bad anyway. And you're like, ugh. And after they mention it another time, right, where they're like, they're still hacking up this elf, you know he's gonna take somebody out at the end, a heroic moment, right? You see it coming. You're like, okay, give it to me. We meet a gnome named Bobbin. Bobbin is like plot armor, I guess is that what you want to call it? I think he's superfluous. I think the book could have worked without him completely, right? Because and for no reason, right? And we're just like, here's physics, I'm going to throw those out. Dude has like a flying contraption. I think there's a picture of it. Let me find a picture. He gets like a flying contraption. Here it is. This is as far, right? Just one of these Leonardo da Vinci looking situations where our boy Bobbin gets in this thing and flies up in the air. I'm like, all right, I guess that makes sense. Why am I looking at this? And then he can't land it. Like, he tries to land, and the thing's like so buoyant, flies back up. He literally can't land it. And I'm like, what is this gooberness doing in my story? And then he turns into just like reconnaissance for our crew. He just flies off, he'll come back and he'll tell them where stuff is, and he'll fly off again. And I'm like, we're really going to do this? And the author's like, yeah, bruh, it's happening. He starts asking for raisins. He gets hungry because he's been up there, right? And then I'm like, I can't help myself. Okay, this is just me. It wasn't in the book. But when you tell me someone's been trapped in the air for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks or more, they asking for food and water, you gonna eat the food? Then what happens? Y'all know. How's he gonna go poopy? Is he just like pooping off the edge of this plane down onto the unsuspecting people? That's disgusting, right? He doesn't mention it. We're just like, it's fine that he's stuck in the air for 5 days. He turns into reconnaissance. What we thought was going to be a long journey of our lady looking for our guy, he's just like, oh, I found him. They're right here. Shh, they just walk right to him. It's hilarious. It's so silly. He ends up getting chased by a dragon. A dragon. Like fire-breathing dragon that's talking to him through his mind. But it can't catch him because it had already flown like 500 miles, so it's tired. I'm like, okay. I guess the dragon got tired. And he's up there being Top Gun, whipping it. So the dragon doesn't kill him. It's so silly. It's so silly But again, it's not pretending to not be. So it fits its own situation. It completely fits. We don't mention the dragon again. The dragon literally came to check up on our evil lady and then flew back to the Dark One. That's it. He came, he chased a gnome, and he flew away. That's how this story can roll. It can just throw something at you and then walk away from it. Our lady, our evil lady, is a Kalanda Darkmoor. I think it's a great name. That's how they show her, right? And on her, around her neck, she has a sort of a medallion of some kind, with inside is trapped an evil wizard named Caliban. And that's an all-time great name, Caliban. I'm sure it means something. I'm sure I'll find out what Caliban means when I'm looking up pictures for this particular video. Don't know what it means. All I've heard it in relation to is the Expanse books, right? One of the Expanse books is called Caliban's War. I just think it's a cool name, right? And it's an evil wizard trapped in some kind of stone. It's very cool. It's how she's able to control all these goblins, right? They're like backsass her. She pulls the pendant out and it like vaporizes them, right? Which you're having a good time if wizards trapped in pendants are vaporizing ogres. You're having a good time. And I was. I absolutely was. I'd actually be interested in more of these Dragonlance books, as cheese-tastic as this was. Just because I swear, these characters will be in my head for a fairly long time. In any case, she's looking for... She has the way in, I guess. She knows the way into this Thorbardin, and she's going to like hold the gate for these other ones to come, and then her reward is the Dwarven Kingdom. I guess full of dwarf slaves or something. The evil one's going to get the world. You know how evil people go. Evil! They love to do evil stuff. And the wizard's there helping because he's a dirty evil wizard. Turns out, back in ye olden day, our boy Caliban, they tried to take him out, right? What's that other wizard's name? Glen Shadow? Glen Shadow and a couple of other wizards came to take him out because he was a rogue wizard. Apparently that's not allowed. And he vaporized two of them. And I think he like enchanted his own heart to hold his essence before he ripped his own heart out of his chest to chuck the little pendant away so that Glen Shadow would think he died. And I'm like, that's the hardest crap I've ever heard. That dude's serious. In any case, he wants to fight Glen Shadow. I don't think they ever really fight. They just end up... Okay. They go into this area where an ancient battle had gone, and because of Spellbinder, a big evil spell, powerful, that didn't go off in the last war is like in stasis. It's been in stasis for like 9,000 years or something. And it attaches itself to our dumb gnome, our chess, until it gets enough away from this spellbinder to go off. It's like a trapped bomb or something. Man, that's a cool element. I'll take it. But it ends up going off at the penultimate moment of our story, right? And sort of like clearing house here, so to speak. And then, I swear, it's a lot of buildup, right? I'm interested in why this war's going. I'm interested in how Thorbardin, or the Dwarven City, will react to this new entrance. I'm interested in what our boy Chane, who ends up being of royal lineage, will do. He's talking about like a trading zone across some bridge or something, right? He has plans. So all this stuff is built up in it, and I'm like, it's getting to, the end of the book. And it ends at the last page, it just stops. But I'm like, we're not gonna be able to top all these loose ends. I'm gonna have to drop this from a 3 to a 2. And then our author, well, let's see, our boy Dan, is like, plot twist. I'm going to button it all up in like 2 pages. He kind of does. Happily ever after, so to speak. Our wing overlives. John A's like famous and rich. He got the girl. Dad just got to deal with it. The elf died after a heroic shot. He shot our Kalanda through the chest. So, Then everyone gets scattered by the spell going off. Then everyone meets back at the bar. Literally, we meet back at the bar and everything worked out. And that's the end of the book. It's a short and sweet book. Ad time? Ad time? Ads? I don't know what the symbol is for ads. There's really not much to this book. It is what it is. It's not hiding it. I have a strong visual on each of the characters, which I'll carry with me, I'm assuming. I'm going to think of it at random times. I might look for more of Dragonlance books, even though they're like a cheesy 80s movie that I don't enjoy. But it was good. It was good, and if you just want that fantasy junk food, it's a solid 3, people. Solid 3. Can you avoid it? Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to read this book. Your life isn't better after eating a whole bag of chips. It's just tasty sometimes, right? It's just tasty. You just wants it. I wants it. Lord of the Rings, you should read. Game of Thrones, you should not read. Gates of Thorbardin, yeah, give it a go. Give it a go, people. Alright, this might be one of the shorter videos, but I mean, bro, there wasn't much to the book. I mean, how long can you describe a bag of chips? I talk to you next week.